One day a daughter goes to her mother and says, "What is the value of a girl's life who falls into vice?" The mother looked at her and says, "Daughter, if you want to know the value of a girl's life who falls into vice, tomorrow, when the king is leaving the palace with his procession, throw yourself in front of his horse and tell me what you experienced." She went to the king's palace and threw herself in front of the king's horse during the king's processional exit. Suddenly, the king got off his horse and picked her up. He ordered his soldiers to take her to her house. The daughter is surprised by the kindness of the king. When she got home, she ran to her mother and told her what the king had done. The next day, the mother says to her daughter, "I want you to go back to the king's palace and throw yourself in front of the king's horse again when he's leaving the palace with his procession." The daughter says, "I want this." Daughter goes back to the palace and throws herself in front of the king's horse when he's leaving the palace. But the king just passed by her without giving her a glance or recognition. Instead, one of the king's ministers picked her up and she had to go home alone. Surprised, the daughter runs home to her mother and says, "Mother, the king did not even look at me instead. His minister picked me up and let me come home alone." "Okay, daughter. Tomorrow go back to the king's palace and throw yourself in front of the minister." The daughter didn't want to go, but she told her mother okay. The next day, the daughter again runs to the king's palace and throws herself in front of the minister, but no one looked at her in the king's procession. Only a passerby from the common people picked her up. The daughter runs back home very angry this time and told her mother she will not go back, ever. But her mother pleaded, "Please, my daughter, tomorrow is the last day to go there." The next day, the daughter, very sad, runs to the king's palace and throws herself in front of the king's horse again during his processional exit. But no one cared about her except for a dog that wetted her face with his tongue. The daughter goes back home crying and says, "Mother, mother, no one cared about me except for a dog that wet her face with his tongue." Her mother said to her, "This is the case for a girl who falls in society. A rich person or a reckless young man takes her and then leaves her to someone less than him, until one day she becomes cheap commodity for street dogs. So it is upon you, my daughter, to decide the value of your life and decide whether you want to fall into vice." The essence of this story: all mothers must learn how to raise their children properly, using wisdom and not violence.